The silence in my apartment is heavy, the kind that only comes when you're drowning in debt and your 4-year-old daughter is finally asleep. I'm staring at a stack of past due notices when my phone vibrates, a private number lighting up the dark. I expect a debt collector, but when I press the receiver to my ear, I don't hear a demand for money. I hear the ragged, shallow breath of someone who's forgotten how to live. Is this the end? The voice whispers, fragile as spun glass. It's Leora Hawke, the billionaire's daughter, though I don't know that yet. To me, she's just a girl in a hospital bed somewhere, terrified and alone. I dialed the wrong number, didn't I? Please, I don't want to die alone. Just stay on the line. Just for tonight. My cynical instinct tells me to hang up, but as she describes the man with the cold eyes, watching her room, a freight train of realization hits me. This isn't just a wrong number, it's a plea from inside a gilded cage that's about to be locked forever. Stick around until the very end to see how a man with nothing becomes the only shield for a woman who has everything. If you're ready for a story about sacrifice and a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter of this journey. I'm here, I say, my voice rough. I'm not going anywhere. The steady beep of a heart monitor filters through the speaker, a rhythmic, mechanical pulse that sounds like a countdown. I shift the phone against my ear, glancing at my daughter, her small face softened by sleep, oblivious to the fact that her father is currently anchored to a dying woman's bedside by nothing but a cellular signal. Who are you really? I ask, my voice barely a whisper so I don't wake the only thing in this world that matters to me. A soft, jagged laugh breaks the static. Just a girl who lived in a house with 50 rooms and never found one that felt like home, she replies. My father, he's Silas Hawke. To the world, he's a titan of industry. To me, he's the man who keeps a digital ledger of my breaths because my death is worth more as a tax write-off than my life is as a daughter. The name hits me like a physical blow. Silas Hawke isn't just a billionaire. He's the man whose face is plastered on every news cycle, currently brokering a merger that would redefine the global economy. And here I am, Eamon Wolf, a man whose greatest achievement today was stretching a single box of pasta to last 3 nights, holding the life of his heiress in the palm of my hand. You're Leora, I realize out loud, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with a terrifying finality. The sick princess of Seattle. The news says you're in a private recovery retreat in the Alps. The Alps are beautiful this time of year, I'm sure, she whispers, her voice growing thinner, more fragile. But I'm in a windowless room in a wing of the hospital that doesn't exist on the floor plans. My father's security is outside. They think I'm sedated. They think I've already accepted the silence. I look at the eviction notice on my table, then back at my daughter. My world is built on cold, hard reality, meat, bone, and the desperate need to survive. Her world is built on shadows and silver spoons, yet we are both staring into the same abyss. Why call me? I ask, my grip tightening on the phone. Out of all the numbers in the world, why this one? It was the number my mother gave me before she vanished, Lyra says, her breath hitching. She told me if the world ever turned dark, to call this. I must have misdialed a single digit. Or maybe for once in my life, I finally got something right. Suddenly, the sound of a heavy door creaking open echoes from her end. The heart monitor's rhythm spikes into a frantic, panicked gallop. Leora. I stand up, the chair scraping against the floorboards. He's here, she gasps, the phone muffling as if she's hiding it beneath the thin hospital sheets. The man with the cold eyes. Please, don't let them turn me into a ghost. The line doesn't go dead, but the silence that follows is heavier than any scream. I am just a man in a crumbling apartment, but as I listen to the muffled footsteps of a billionaire's enforcer approaching a dying girl, I realize my emotional armor has finally cracked. I don't just want to stay on the line anymore. I want to burn the gilded cage down. The silence on the other end of the line isn't empty. It's vibrating with the kind of predatory stillness that makes the hair on my arms stand up. I press the phone so hard against my ear I can hear my own pulse, a frantic contrast to the slow, rhythmic thud-thud of the boots echoing through Leora's room. Every instinct I have developed as a man living on the edge tells me to hang up, to sink back into the anonymity of my debt and my quiet apartment. But the memory of her fragile voice acts like a hook in my chest. Amen. She breathes, the sound so faint it's almost lost to the static. He's standing at the foot of the bed. He's not moving. He's just watching the monitor. Describe him, I command, my voice low and steady, trying to anchor her. Don't look at his face if you're scared, just give me details. Anything. He's tall, she whispers, her breath hitching in a way that tells me she's crying without making a sound. Gray suit. Too sharp for a hospital. But it's his hand, Amen. He's resting it on the rail of my bed. There's a scar, jagged and white, running from his thumb all the way down to a heavy Patek Philippe watch. His eyes aren't human. They're like pieces of flint, cold and gray, waiting for a spark to start a fire. A freight train of realization hits me, cold and heavy. I've seen that description before, buried in the dark corners of the news cycles my father used to warn me about. This isn't just a security guard or a worried relative. This is a ghost from a past that was supposed to be buried 15 years ago. A man who is methodical, patient, and utterly devoid of mercy. He's leaning in, Leora gasps, and I hear the unmistakable metallic click of a syringe being tapped. He said it's time for my supplement. But I'm not due for hours. Amen, he's smiling. It's the kind of smile you give a dog before you put it down. Listen to me, Leora. I say, my heart hammering against my ribs. You have to make a noise. Drop something. Knock over the monitor. If he thinks he can do this in the shadows, he will. You have to bring the light in. I can't move my legs, she sobs, the terror finally breaking through her voice. He's been dosing me for days. I'm a ghost in my own body. The man's voice suddenly cuts through the line, muffled but chillingly clear. Who are you talking to, princess? I thought we agreed no more imaginary friends. The line erupts into a chaotic scramble of white noise, the sound of a phone being kicked across a linoleum floor, a sharp intake of breath, and then a heavy, suffocating silence. The cleaning house hasn't just begun for Leora. It's reaching out through the digital void to find me. I look at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in the next room, and I realize that by staying on this line, I've invited a monster into our sanctuary. But as I hear the heavy door click shut on Leora's end, I know I can't let her go dark. The silence following the scuffle in Leora's room is a cold, physical weight. I'm still holding the phone, my knuckles white, listening to the hollow ring of a sterile environment that's become a tomb. I turn to my laptop, the screen's blue light cutting through the shadows of my kitchen as I pull up the latest financial headlines. The name, Hawk, is everywhere, draped in the gold-leafed promise of a $30 billion merger with a global pharmaceutical giant. The details of the deal are methodical and patient, designed to create an untouchable empire. But as I dig deeper into the leaked filings, the why behind Leora's imprisonment starts to bleed through the corporate jargon. The merger hinges on a clean transition of assets that include proprietary medical patents held in Leora's name, inherited from the mother who vanished years ago. If Leora is alive and vocal, she's a legal roadblock. If she's incapacitated or tragically lost after a long, private illness, the power shifts entirely to Silas. They're turning her into a ghost to balance a spreadsheet, I whisper to the empty room. The stakes aren't just about a family dispute, they are about a massive arm's-length deal where the cleaning house has already begun. Leora isn't a daughter to Silas. She's a liability in a high-level underworld war of white-collar crime. My eyes scan a photo of Silas Hawke at a recent gala. Behind him, partially obscured by the flash of a camera, stands a man with a familiar silhouette. I zoom in until the pixels blur. There, resting on a champagne flute, is a hand with a jagged white scar and a Patek Philippe watch. Leora wasn't hallucinating. The man in her room is Anthony, a shadow from a past that should have stayed dead. He was supposed to be a former partner who faked his death 15 years ago, but now he's back, dismantling lives from the shadows to ensure the Hawke legacy remains unchallenged. The $30 billion silence is his masterpiece. If Leora dies quietly, the merger goes through, the money moves, and the truth stays buried under a mountain of offshore accounts. I look at the phone, still active, still transmitting the faint, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor that is slowing down. I'm just a single dad with a past-due electric bill, but I now hold the only evidence of a multi-billion-dollar conspiracy. The why is clear. Silas doesn't just want her gone. He needs her erased to finalize his kingdom. A soft stir from the bedroom reminds me of what's at stake in my own world. By knowing this, I've become a part of the ledger. I can feel the invisible eyes of the Hawk Empire turning toward my zip code. But then, a faint sound comes through the phone. A rhythmic tapping. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. She's still in there. And as long as she's breathing, the merger isn't a done deal. I pull my daughter's worn-out backpack toward me and start packing. I don't have a gray suit or a Patek Philippe, but I have the one thing Silas Hawk forgot to buy. A witness who has nothing left to lose. The tapping on the other end of the line stops, replaced by a breath so thin it sounds like wind through a cracked window. Eamon? Are you still there? Leora's voice is a ghost of itself, shivering with a cold that no hospital blanket can fix. I'm here, I whisper, checking the deadbolt on my front door for the 3rd time. I'm not hanging up. He thinks I'm sleeping, she says, her words slurring slightly from whatever was in that syringe. But I need you to know the truth before the silence wins. My father, he's done this before. The world thinks my mother died in a tragic boating accident off the coast of Greece. They printed tributes about her adventurous soul and her untimely end. But she didn't die, Eamon. He erased her. I feel a chill that has nothing to do with the draft in my kitchen. The cleaning house didn't start with Leora. It's a family tradition. She found out about the first iteration of the merger. Leora continues, the rhythm of her heart monitor erratic and sharp. She had proof that Silas was using his foundations to launder the seed money for his empire. She was going to the authorities. One night, she was tucking me in, promising we'd go on a long vacation the next morning. The next day, she was just gone. No body. No goodbye. Just a press release and a father who looked me in the eye and told me to forget she ever existed. The weight of her confession settles in my chest, heavy as lead. Silas Hawk isn't just a businessman protecting a merger. He's a man who views people as ledger entries to be deleted when they no longer serve the bottom line. He faked a death 15 years ago to bury a partner, and he did it again to bury a wife. Now, he's perfecting the art with his own daughter. He kept her jewelry, Leora whispers, a jagged sob catching in her throat. He kept her rings in a glass case in his study like trophies. Every time I walked past that room, I knew that in his world, love is just a liability that hasn't been liquidated yet. I look at my own daughter, her chest rising and falling in the perfect, innocent rhythm of the deep sleep only a child can know. My hands are shaking. I'm just a man who writes scripts and struggles to pay for groceries, but I've spent my life studying the narrative arcs of monsters. Silas Hawk thinks he's the protagonist of this story, the cold, untouchable kingpin who can rewrite reality to suit his needs. He's coming back. Leora gasps, the sound of a heavy door handle turning echoing through the phone. Eamon, if he finds the phone, tell them about the rings. Tell them he never lost her. He took her. The line descends into a frantic scuffle, then the muffled sound of a voice that is too calm, too patient. Princess, you're talking in your sleep again. The connection doesn't cut, but the silence that follows is a death sentence. I realize now that Leora isn't just a wrong number, she's the final witness to a 15-year trail of blood and gold. And Silas Hawk is about to close the books. The silence that follows Leora's revelation about her mother is a vacuum, one I fill by scouring every digital footprint of the Hawk estate. My screen is a mosaic of sterile hospital corridors and high-end law firm bios. A collection of vultures circling a girl who isn't even dead yet. I'm looking for the leaks, the internal traders who are helping Silas maintain this $30 billion illusion. There is Dr. Eris Thorne, the chief medical consultant, whose published papers on deep sedation therapy read more like manuals on how to manufacture a coma. Then there's Marcus Vane, the Hawk family's lead counsel, a man whose entire career is built on the cleaning house protocol. settling the estates of those who become inconvenient. I see them now, not as healers or protectors, but as a circle of traders evaluated by their loyalty to the ledger rather than the patient. They are the ones standing by while a ghost from the past, a man with a scarred hand and a Patek Philippe, prepares the final needle. They're all in on it, aren't they? Leora's voice returns, a ghostly whisper over the speaker. The scuffle has ended, leaving her sounding hollowed out. The doctors, the lawyers, they don't see a person. They see a series of signatures and a closed case file. They see a payday. I growl, my eyes fixed on a photo of Vane and Thorne shaking hands at a charity gala for rare disease research. The irony is a physical weight. They're not vultures because they're hungry, Leora. They're vultures because they've been trained to wait for the heart to stop. I realize that Silas hasn't just trapped her in a room. He's trapped her in a legal and medical fortress designed to make her disappearance look like an act of God. The $30 million arms deals of the underworld have nothing on the clinical efficiency of corporate erasure. These men are the architects of her isolation, the ones ensuring that even if she screamed, the sound would never leave the floor plans that don't exist. Vane was here earlier, she says, her breath hitching. He had a tablet. He wanted me to use my fingerprint to authorize a medical proxy for my father. He told me it was for my own protection. That if I didn't, the state would take everything. Don't touch it, I warn, my heart hammering. That proxy is the final nail. Once he has that, he doesn't need you to be conscious. He just needs you to be a heartbeat. I look at my daughter, still lost in her peaceful world, and then back at the faces of the men on my screen. I'm just a scriptwriter who knows how to spot a villain, but these men aren't characters in a story. They are real, they are methodical, and they are currently standing at the edge of Leora's bed, waiting for the light to go out. But as I watch the cursor blink on my screen, I realize I've found the one thing they didn't account for, a crack in their circle. Eddie, the junior security tech who hasn't been paid in 3 months, whose social media is a string of complaints about the hawk coldness. The circle isn't as tight as Silas thinks. And if I can get to the tech, I can get to the girl. The quiet of my apartment is shattered not by a sound, but by the sudden, blinding sweep of headlights across my living room wall. A black town car has pulled up to the curb of my crumbling building, idling with a low, predatory hum. My heart hammers against my ribs as I look at my daughter, still asleep, and then back at the phone where Leora's breathing has become a faint, rhythmic ghost. The knock at the door is rhythmic and demanding, the sound of someone who is used to doors opening before they even touch them. When I open it, I'm not met by a monster with a scar, but by Marcus Vane, the Hawk family's lead counsel. He steps inside without an invitation, his expensive suit a sharp, jarring contrast to my peeling wallpaper. He doesn't look at me, he looks at the room with a clinical, detached pity. "Mr. Wolf," he says, his voice as smooth and cold as polished stone. "We've traced a series of unauthorized communications to this address. It seems there's been a technical glitch in our network, and you've been caught in the crossfire of a very private family matter." He places a heavy, embossed briefcase on my scarred kitchen table. When he clicks it open, the interior light reflects off stacks of $100 bills. More money than I've seen in my entire life, enough to pay off my debts, move my daughter to a better zip code, and never worry about a past due notice again. "This is a gift from Silas Hawk," Vane continues, sliding a non-disclosure agreement toward me. "A gesture of appreciation for your discretion. Sign this, delete the call history, and destroy the phone. You can walk away from this with a life you only ever scripted." I look at the money, then at the phone resting near my daughter's stuffed bear. I can still hear the faint, rhythmic beep of Leora's heart monitor through the speaker, the sound of a girl being erased to protect a $30 billion empire. Silas thinks everything has a price, that every man has a breaking point where his integrity is liquidated for a comfortable life. He thinks I'm a witness to be eliminated or bought. "You're a scriptwriter, Eamon," Vane says, leaning in, his eyes like flint. "You know how this ends for the hero who doesn't take the deal. The cleaning house doesn't just happen in hospitals. It happens in apartments like this. Don't let your pride become your daughter's inheritance." The threat is veiled, but it's as sharp as the syringe Leora described. He's telling me that if I don't take the hush money, the Hawk Empire will dismantle my life with the same methodical patience they used on Leora's mother. I look him in the eye and feel the last of my emotional armor snap into place. I don't see a benefactor, I see a vulture. I think of Leora, trapped in a room that doesn't exist, begging me to stay on the line because she didn't want to die alone. The thing about scripts, Marcus, I say, my voice rough and steady, is that the audience always hates the guy who takes the money. I slide the briefcase back toward him and pick up the phone. I'm not hanging up. And I'm not signing. Vane's face doesn't change, but the air in the room turns arctic. He snaps the briefcase shut. A mistake, Mr. Wolf. A legacy-defining mistake. As he exits, the black car peels away, leaving me in the dark with a target on my back and a dying girl on the line. I realize I've officially defied the Empire, and now the hunt begins. The sound of Marcus Vane's car fading into the distance leaves a ringing silence in its wake, a heavy atmospheric shift that feels like the calm before a tactical thriller reaches its boiling point. I sink back into my chair, the plastic groaning under my weight, and press the phone to my ear. The connection is still there, a fragile thread of data linking my world of peeling paint to her world of sterile, high-stakes isolation. He's gone, Leora, I whisper, watching my daughter's chest rise and fall in the dim light. He tried to buy my silence. He offered me a life I only ever dreamed of writing. And? Her voice is a thin, shivering thread, barely audible over the rhythmic hum of the monitors. And I told him the audience hates a sellout. I say, a dry, cinematic edge creeping into my tone. But he made it clear. The cleaning house has begun. I'm officially a part of your story now. Leora let out a breath that sounded like a sob caught in a throat made of glass. You're a fool, Eamon. You have a daughter. You have a life that hasn't been liquidated yet. Why stay on the line with a ghost? I look at the stacks of past due notices on my table, then at the sleeping child who is my entire kingdom. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm not just writing about heroes, Leora. I'm looking at the man in the mirror and wondering if he can actually be one. Your father thinks power is a ledger, a series of assets and liabilities to be managed with cold, methodical patience. But he's wrong. Power isn't what you own, it's what you're willing to lose to keep someone else from falling. I used to think my father was a god, she whispers, the monitors beep slowing as if she's finally finding a moment of peace. I thought his wealth was a shield. But lying here, watching the man with the cold eyes check his Patek Philippe while he waits for me to stop breathing, I realize it's just a cage. All that money, and he can't buy a single second of genuine grief. When I go, there will be no tears, only a finalized merger and a shift in the corporate structure. Then don't go quietly, I say, my voice rough with a new, urgent purpose. The world thinks you're an asset, but to me, you're the woman who called a stranger because she refused to let the darkness win. That's the kind of wisdom from the streets you can't buy in a boardroom. Eamon, she says, her voice suddenly clear, stripped of the sedation and the fear. If I don't make it to tomorrow, tell your daughter that her father was the only man who couldn't be bought. Tell her that's the only legacy that matters. The emotional armor I've worn for years finally cracks, letting in a sliver of hope for redemption. We sit in that shared silence for a long time, two strangers at opposite ends of a conspiracy, connected by a wrong number and the realization that the most powerful thing in the world isn't a billion-dollar deal, but the simple, selfless act of staying on the line. The serenity of my apartment is shattered by a frantic, mechanical alarm bleeding through the phone line, a sharp contrast to the quiet breathing of my sleeping daughter. Eamon. Something's happening, Leora gasps, her voice trembling as the steady hum of her heart monitor is drowned out by a distant, booming voice over a PA system. The words code silver and immediate lockdown echo through the sterile corridors of her prison, marking a shift from a suspenseful mystery to an urgent tactical thriller. They're moving her, I realize, the news of the missing guards and the hospital wing going dark triggering a freight train of realizations. The threat is no longer a future possibility. The cleaning house has begun in earnest, and the $30 billion silence is about to become permanent. I grab my keys, my heart hammering against my ribs as I realize that if I don't move now, Leora Hawk won't just be a ghost in the machine, she'll be a headline in tomorrow's obituary. I look at my daughter, still lost in her dreams, and then at the phone. I can't leave her alone, but I can't let Leora die in the dark. I dial my neighbor, the only person I trust, with shaking hands, while Leora describes the man with the cold eyes, returning to her room with a gurney and a set of heavy restraints. "He's smiling, Amen," she whispers, a jagged sob catching in her throat. "He says thulps are waiting." The pacing accelerates rapidly as I sprint to my car, the engine turning over with a desperate roar that mirrors the urgency in my chest. The hospital isn't just a building anymore, it's Pier 17 going dark, a fortress of corporate secrets where the guards are being compromised and the exits are being sealed. I have to reach her before the transition of assets becomes a transition of life to death. "Stay with me, Leora." I growl into the hands-free set as I weave through the midnight traffic, my eyes fixed on the distant, glowing silhouette of the Hawk Medical Plaza. "Don't let them close the door." "The lights are going out, Amen," she breathes, the sound of heavy metal bolts sliding into place echoing through the line. "It's so dark in here." I hit the accelerator, the cold, untouchable Kingpin's world finally colliding with my own gritty reality. I am just a man with a target on his back, but as the hospital looms ahead, a dark monolith against the city skyline, I realize that the only way to save the girl is to walk directly into the heart of the machine. The lobby of the Hawk Medical Plaza is a cathedral of glass and cold, calculating power, but as I burst through the doors, I'm not a man looking for a miracle, I'm a man ready to burn the temple down. The code silver alarm is still wailing, a rhythmic, mechanical pulse that matches the freight train of adrenaline surging through my veins. My phone is still active, tucked into my shoulder, Leora's ragged breathing the only compass I have left. "Amen." "The freight elevator," she gasps, her voice a thin, shimmering thread of hope for redemption. Eddie, he left the service door unlatched. He couldn't go through with it." The junior security tech, the unlikely ally who finally cracked under the Hawk coldness, becomes my key to the fortress. I move with an urgent tactical thriller pace, slipping past the panicked crowds into the darkened service corridors. The lights flicker and die, plunging the hallway into a gritty, cinematic shadows where the only thing visible is the white, jagged scar of the man waiting for me at the end of the hall. Anthony Duca, the ghost from a supposedly dead past, stands between me and Leora's room. He checks his Patek Philippe watch with a methodical, patient indifference that makes my blood run cold. "Mr. Wolf," he says, his voice a dry, rasping echo of 1,000 buried secrets. "You should have taken the money. Silas doesn't like loose ends in his kingdom." "Then he's going to hate me," I growl, lunging forward. The confrontation is raw and visceral, a struggle between a man who has nothing left to lose and a man who has forgotten how to feel anything but power. As we grapple, I manage to kick the service tablet Eddie left behind into the central hub. With a single command, the code silver isn't just an internal alarm, it becomes an external broadcast. The $30 billion silence is shattered as the recorded audio of Leora's confession and the evidence of her mother's erasure begin to stream directly to the news vans idling outside. The cleaning house protocol is being broadcast to the world in real time. I break free and burst into Leora's room. She is pale, a frail, hospitalized figure, but her eyes are filled with a fierce, burning emotion as she sees me. The man with the cold eyes tries to intervene, but the sound of sirens and the heavy boots of the actual authorities, not Silas's hired vultures, echo through the hall. The threat is no longer a future possibility. The walls of the Hawk Empire are finally crumbling. I reach her bedside and take her hand. "I stayed on the line," I whisper, my voice rough. Leora smiles, a faint, beautiful shift in her emotional armor. "You didn't just stay on the line, Amen. You changed the ending." As the sun begins to rise over the city, the cold, untouchable Kingpin is led away in a circle of flashing lights, and the girl under protection finally takes a breath of truth that isn't measured by a ledger. I look at the phone one last time before clicking it off, ready to go home to the only legacy that ever mattered.